It started as a peaceful afternoon at a quiet diner where a 97-year-old World War II veteran sat sipping his coffee. A man of quiet dignity, he wore his age with pride, along with a jacket adorned with patches from his years of service. But then the atmosphere shifted. 6 rough-looking bikers barged in, loud and disruptive, their eyes eventually locking on the elderly man in the corner. Smirks spread across their faces as they approached him, mocking his age and belittling his military service. The room fell silent as everyone watched, unsure of what to do. The veteran, calm yet unshaken, made one simple move. He reached for his phone and made a quick call. Within moments, the unexpected happened, leaving the bikers frozen in place. What came next was something no one in the diner could have anticipated. Stick around to see how the tables turned and why these bikers will never forget this day. The bikers leaned in closer, their laughter growing louder as they continued taunting the veteran. They seemed to think they had the upper hand, but the man didn't flinch. He simply set his phone back on the table, his expression calm but firm. The air in the diner grew heavy, and the other patrons watched in uneasy silence. Who had he called? What was about to happen? As the bikers exchanged cocky grins, one of them sneered, "What's an old man like you gonna do? Call your buddies from the war." They laughed again, but there was something about the veteran's quiet confidence that seemed to rattle them just a little. A few minutes passed, the tension thickening with every second. Then a low rumble echoed outside, growing louder and closer. The sound wasn't motorcycles, it was something else entirely. The bikers glanced out the window, their smiles fading as their bravado began to waver. Whatever was coming, it was clear they hadn't planned for this. The rumbling outside grew louder, now unmistakable, a convoy of vehicles pulling up to the diner. The bikers exchanged uneasy glances as several trucks and SUVs rolled into the parking lot, their engines humming like a warning. Doors opened, and one by one, men stepped out. They weren't just any men. Dressed in sharp, coordinated jackets with military insignias, they moved with a purpose. Their faces showed years of discipline and experience, but more than that, they radiated loyalty and respect. Inside, the veteran remained seated, sipping his coffee calmly, as though he'd seen this all before. The bikers, on the other hand, began shifting nervously, their earlier bravado crumbling. "What's going on here?" one muttered, his voice quieter now. The men outside didn't storm in or cause a scene. Instead, they stood tall by their vehicles, their presence alone enough to speak volumes. It was clear they weren't here to start trouble. They were here to finish it, if need be. Inside, the tension was electric. The bikers were starting to realize they had underestimated the wrong man. The bikers grew restless, their confidence slipping with every passing second. The men outside remained stoic, unmoving, like a wall of silent strength. A few of them made eye contact through the diner's windows, their gazes unwavering and unshakable. The leader of the bikers, clearly uncomfortable, tried to laugh it off. "What's this? Some kind of reunion? Just a bunch of old guys backing up their buddy." But his voice lacked the arrogance it held before. The veteran finally set his coffee cup down and looked up, his calm demeanor now carrying an edge of steel. "You should have thought twice before disrespecting someone who fought for the freedom you take for granted," he said, his voice steady but firm. Before the bikers could respond, the door to the diner opened. A tall man in his 40s stepped in, his military jacket matching those outside. He walked straight to the veteran, saluting him with the utmost respect. "Sir," he said, loud enough for everyone to hear, "your team is here." The room froze. The bikers exchanged panicked glances, realizing they were now completely outnumbered. The tension was unbearable. the question hanging in the air. What was going to happen next? The leader of the bikers, now visibly rattled, stepped forward and tried to save face. "Look, we didn't mean anything by it," he said, his voice cracking slightly. "It was all just a joke, all right. No harm done." But no one in the diner was buying it, least of all the veteran or the man who had just entered. The tall man standing beside the veteran didn't flinch. Instead, he turned and gave a small nod toward the group outside. In an instant, the men in the parking lot began to move. They didn't storm the diner or confront the bikers directly. Instead, they surrounded the bikes parked outside. The metallic sound of chains rattling and locks clicking echoed faintly through the windows. "What are they doing?" One of the bikers blurted out, panic rising in his voice. Another peered outside, his face paling. The convoy wasn't just standing guard. They were taking control. The veteran finally stood, his movements slow but deliberate. He walked over to the bikers, his eyes unwavering. "You thought you could intimidate me," he said, his voice calm but cutting. "But let me show you what loyalty really looks like." As he spoke, the door opened again, and more individuals began to file in. Veterans, young and old, each one wearing the same unwavering expression of determination. The bikers realized too late they weren't just dealing with one man. They had unknowingly picked a fight with a brotherhood that ran generations deep. The stakes had just reached a whole new level, and there was no easy way out. The bikers were cornered, their tough exteriors now replaced with visible unease. One of them made a move toward the door, but the tall man who had entered earlier stepped in his path, blocking the way with a single, intimidating glance. "You're not going anywhere just yet," he said firmly. The veteran, still standing tall despite his age, took a step closer. His voice was calm, but his words carried weight. "Respect isn't something you take, it's something you earn. And today, you've earned a lesson you'll never forget." Before the bikers could respond, the men outside entered the diner in an orderly fashion, surrounding the group. They didn't say a word, but their presence alone was enough to make the air thick with tension. Then, to everyone's surprise, the veteran raised a hand, signaling the men to stop. "Let them go," he said, his tone measured. "They've learned enough." The bikers, confused but relieved, scrambled to the door. But just as they reached the parking lot, they froze. Their motorcycles were still there, but the keys weren't. The tall man followed them outside, holding up a small box with a smirk. "Your keys will be mailed back to you after you write an apology letter to this man," he said, pointing to the veteran. The bikers' faces turned red with embarrassment, but they knew they had no choice. The veteran returned to his seat, sipping his coffee with a small smile. The diner erupted into applause, not just for the victory, but for the dignity and respect he had commanded without raising his voice. And as the bikers slinked away, heads hanging low, one thing was clear: they would think twice before messing with the wrong person again. As the bikers disappeared down the road, their pride dented and their lesson learned, the diner slowly returned to its usual hum of chatter and clinking dishes. The veteran, unfazed by the commotion, sat quietly, finishing his coffee. A few patrons approached him to shake his hand or simply offer a word of thanks for his service. The tall man who had orchestrated the bikers' retreat stayed behind, sitting across from the veteran. "You didn't have to let them off so easily," he said with a smile. The veteran chuckled softly. "Sometimes the strongest lesson is knowing when to show mercy. They'll carry that moment with them for a long time, more than anything else we could have done." The two men shared a quiet moment of understanding before the convoy outside began to disperse. One by one, the veteran's allies saluted him as they left, a silent tribute to the respect he had earned over a lifetime. As the diner settled back into peace, one thing lingered in the air, a reminder that courage, loyalty, and integrity always speak louder than arrogance.